German generals laughed at US logistics until the Red Ball Express fueled Patton's blitz. Below, we'll share the recollections of a German soldier who witnessed those events with his own eyes. We'll examine in detail what happened, who was to blame, and the consequences. Support the channel by subscribing, commenting, and sharing this video. This topic is too serious to ignore. We laughed back then. We laughed loudly, with that sharp arrogance born of habit, the kind of laughter of men who once ruled and still believed themselves invincible. The Americans, those noisy, uncoordinated newcomers, seemed to us the perfect example of how not to wage war. They moved in a mess of engines and dust, shouted too much, ate too much, and had neither discipline nor a proper sense of timing. In the staff room near the Ardennes, one of our officers, a lean man of the old school, spread a map across the table and tapped the long line of supply stretching from the coast to the front. "Gentlemen," he said, "they are digging their own grave. Their logistics will collapse first. Without fuel, without railways, without precision, they will choke within a week." And we all agreed. The American army looked slow, overfed, clumsy. Too many vehicles, too many drivers, not enough soldiers with experience. In our minds, their rear was chaos, and their tanks were shiny targets waiting to die in the mud once the fuel ran dry. We Germans worshipped order. We believed wars were won by schedules, discipline, and perfect arithmetic. And that was why, when the first reports arrived that the Americans were moving faster than we had calculated, we dismissed them as mistakes. That evening, someone reported that Patton's armored divisions had covered in 3 days what should have taken a week. We laughed again. "Nonsense," someone said, "propaganda." But the next morning the messages grew darker. The Americans had reached towns that by every rule of logic they could not have reached yet. Something was cracking in the Patton we trusted. And for the first time, I heard a strange phrase over the radio, "Red Ball Express." None of us knew what it meant. It sounded like a code or a joke. We would soon learn that it was neither. The first uneasy reports came from the west. Our retreating convoys from Rouen sent word of an endless stream of trucks moving along the roads. They rolled without pause, day and night, through rain and smoke. The soldiers said it was not an army. It was a river. The trucks were the same shape and color, marked with a red circle painted on the side. On every one of them were bags, crates, and fuel cans. It looked as if the Americans had turned every road in France into a living conveyor belt, feeding their front with gasoline, food, and ammunition. Our analysts were confused. The roads were shattered, bridges destroyed, railways gone. According to our figures, the Allies should have drowned in their own supplies. Instead, they accelerated. We intercepted their radio chatter, short, sharp, mercilessly simple. "Keep the wheels turning, no stops, no sleep." That phrase became our doom. Within a week, the line near Rams broke apart. We told ourselves it was a minor retreat, but behind it stood something larger. The Americans were not merely advancing, they were flying. We tried to counterattack, but each time our tanks took position, Thunderbolt aircraft screamed down from above. Artillery followed, then more trucks, pouring fuel into Patton's columns. Everything worked with machine precision. Only it was their machine now, not ours. And the most terrifying thing was that they never stopped. We were used to enemies who paused to regroup. These men did not. Their supply line itself had become a weapon. One evening, as our convoy crawled along a country road, we saw it with our own eyes. On the far horizon, a line of headlights appeared. At first, we thought they were ours, but the light kept coming. It stretched to the sky as if the earth itself glowed. We pulled to the side and watched in silence. The sound was constant, deep, steady, alive. Trucks passed one after another, each only a few dozen meters apart, painted with those red circles that gave the convoy its name. Someone whispered, "That is them." We said nothing more. We only listened as the earth trembled under the weight of engines. That was the Red Ball Express, a road of steel and fuel rolling straight toward our defeat. Later we learned its scale. Hundreds of kilometers, thousands of vehicles, thousands of drivers working without rest. Most of them were black Americans, men who had been told they were not fit for combat. They were given the wheel instead, and with that they saved an army. They built a living artery pumping fuel into Patton's tanks. Day after day, thousands of tons moved forward. No pauses, no errors. Everything that rolled along that road became power, and that power crushed us. I remember someone in the staff room saying, "This is not war, this is production." He was right. The Americans had turned Europe into a factory of movement. Their generals were not afraid of chaos, not afraid to break the rules. Patton was the most dangerous of them all, reckless, impatient, brilliant. He ordered a road built from nothing, refused to wait for railways, refused to stop for planning. His tanks ran on speed, instinct, and audacity. When fuel ran out, the Red Ball came roaring through to feed him. We watched in disbelief as bridges rose in hours, as roads appeared where mud had been. They were improvising, yet every improvisation worked. Once I walked into a room where our corps commander sat by a window staring at a map. His face was pale, not with fear, but with understanding. "They have won, not with weapons," he said quietly. "They have won with movement." I did not understand it then. I do now. Their strength was not in their guns, but in their refusal to stop. While we drew perfect diagrams, they drowned the roads in gasoline. While we calculated fuel quotas, they simply poured rivers of it into the front. And those rivers washed us away. We tried to cut their lifeline once. A small team of our engineers blew up a bridge. For 6 hours the highway was silent. We celebrated that brief success. But by evening they had built a new crossing, laid planks over the river, and the stream of trucks flowed again. Their road was alive. Every driver knew where to go. Every driver knew why. And when the convoy moved, the very air seemed to hum with purpose. By the time autumn came, no one in our ranks laughed anymore. Headquarters collapsed one by one, lines shrank, tanks burned, not because we lacked courage, but because we lacked fuel. The Americans always had it. We listened to the radio and heard that Patton was outrunning his own supply chain, yet somehow it never broke. When he ran low, he ordered his troops to take fuel from us, to seize whatever they found. And still the Red Ball followed behind him, unstoppable. Later we saw photographs, rows upon rows of trucks, drivers with tired faces and clear eyes. They knew they were doing the impossible. The Americans built a road that did not exist, and through it came the end of our Reich. We, who prided ourselves on precision, lost to those who embraced chaos. When I think of those days, I do not see tanks or planes. I see wheels, thousands upon thousands of wheels, turning through the night. We tried to understand their rhythm. Some called it madness, others called it genius. But the truth was simpler. They worked, tirelessly, without vanity. Each man was a single cog in a vast machine we could not break. On one of the final days before our retreat, I stepped outside and saw another American convoy winding through the valley below. The sun struck the metal, the air shimmered with heat. I watched the stream of vehicles and felt no anger, no hatred, only respect. They had done what we thought impossible, turned disorder into order, exhaustion into strength. We had believed war was fought by guns, strategies, and orders. But war, I learned, is fought by those who can move. The ones who keep going win. We stopped. They did not. That was the difference. Years later, after the war, I read a report explaining how the Red Ball Express had been born. It said the system was created in just a few days. No bureaucracy, no endless planning. They gathered every truck, every man, every drop of fuel, and carved out a one-way route across France. No stops, no rest. Each driver drove until he could drive no more, then another took his place. Day after day, week after week, this living river fed their army like a heart-pumping blood. Now I see that this was Patton's true genius, not his speeches, not his fury, but his ability to make the machine of war breathe. We watched his tanks move with impossible speed and called it madness. But his madness had a plan, to stay in motion at all costs. His supply line was not behind him. It was already alive on the road ahead. When the war ended, we were left with empty depots and broken roads. They were left with a road that led straight to victory. Even now, I sometimes hear the echo of those engines. I still smell the gasoline, still feel the vibration of tires on the dirt. It was not mere transport, it was willpower made visible. At night, I dream of that endless stream of headlights again. The road glows, faces pass by, tired, determined, human. We stood by the roadside, ghosts of a fallen order, while the future roared past. That was when I understood why we lost. We laughed when we should have learned. The Americans turned logistics into a weapon. They proved that discipline can live not only in rules, but in movement. They showed that wars are won not in offices, but on the roads. If someone asks what truly decided that campaign, I answer with one word: wheels. Millions of revolutions erased our maps and redrew the world. We thought ourselves masters of war. But the day the Red Ball Express rolled by, we learned we were only students, students of those who refused to stop. If someone had told us then that this noisy, unpolished democratic army would crush the Reich, we would have laughed again. But laughter died the moment the engines began to roar on the horizon. Since that day, I have never mocked an enemy, because the one who keeps moving is always closer to victory. Today, when I recall it all, I feel no bitterness, only respect. We witnessed the birth of a new kind of war, swift, mobile, fearless. Patton became its symbol, but the true heroes were the men behind the wheels. They never fired a gun, never commanded armies, yet their hands steered history forward. So when someone says wars are won by spirit, I nod. Yes, by the spirit that refuses to stop. The Red Ball Express was not just a road of supply, it was a road into the future, where victory belongs to those who never lose momentum. And we stayed behind, trapped among maps and theories. We never again saw a road where destiny itself moved forward. Tell me what you think. Was Patton a madman, or was there reason in his madness? Were those drivers heroes, or merely gears in a giant machine? Perhaps the answer does not matter. What matters is this: when the ground shook beneath their wheels, the world itself changed. And we, standing by the roadside, finally understood. History does not wait for those who laugh. History moves forward, and its wheels never stop.